The Galactic Empire froze when humanity said calmly, "That was only the beginning." Grand Commander Malachar Vreth pressed his heavy palm against the cold stone of the high obsidian tier. The digital ledger of the Sundran assemblies remained clean. No warnings, no negotiation, no delays. For thousands of cycles, the Empire had expanded by erasing younger species that did not know how to hide, and the report from Sector 4 Alpha looked no different. The display showed that the 14 human forward outposts had been reduced to floating ash without firing a single defensive volley in return. Vreth swiped his long fingers across the glass to sign the final administrative clearance decree, sealing the annexation of the territory into the Imperial records. Archivist Vrina adjusted his technical robes, his secondary limbs twitching as he looked at the primary registry board. The human systems had stopped sending communication signals, but the deep space logistics registries showed a 14% energy variance that refused to drop back to baseline levels. He tried to point toward the flashing light on the edge of the holographic map, explaining that the energy draw was still climbing despite the destruction of the outposts. The high officers of the assembly laughed, their deep voices echoing through the chamber as they turned away from the terminal. They saw only the flat tonnage numbers on their screens, assuming that a quiet sector meant a beaten enemy. Across the dark gulf of the sector, Fleet Marshal Thomas Hale sat in a metal chair inside the deep concrete bunker of Aegis Outpost 90. He did not watch the tactical screens that showed the loss of the outer markers. Instead, his scarred left hand rhythmically tapped a tarnished silver coin against the steel desk, making a flat, mechanical sound in the small room. He picked up his old paper ledger with his good hand and drew a thick ink line through the coordinates of the fallen border stations. A younger officer begged him for permission to scramble the defensive fighter wings from the inner base, but Hale did not look up from his desk. He told the crew to hold their positions and leave the local relays offline. Specialist Chull called out from his tracking station, his face turning pale under the high-intensity fluorescent lamps as the master array updated. 45 Sundran capital warships had just crossed the inner perimeter lines, their massive tritanium hulls blocking out the starlight on the main scanners. The alien flagship sent an automated ultimatum through the open channels, demanding immediate total surrender of all planetary assets within a short deadline or face orbital bombardment. Chull looked back at the Marshal, his fingers shaking above his terminal as the countdown began to run on the overhead boards. The outer space around the base remained completely silent, matching the dead communication lines. Hale did not show panic. He slowly reached across his desk and picked up a scratched aluminum vacuum flask, unscrewing the cap with a dull metallic scrape. The sharp, bitter scent of hot dark chicory root brew filled the damp air of the bunker as he took a single, measured drink. He set the flask down beside his paper ledger, his eyes fixed on the final countdown numbers on Chull's terminal. When the timer reached its last mark, Hale reached out and pressed a single manual key on the central console, initializing the hidden automated network known as the Sovereign Core. Out on the frozen rocks of a nearby asteroid, Sergeant Marcus Cole caught the digital handshake on his portable receiver and threw the physical breaker switch on his defense post. The heavy manual throw sent a high-voltage surge straight into the subspace signal buoys hidden beneath the ice fields. Across the entire belt, the active concealment fields died in an instant, stripping away the artificial shadows that had covered the sector for decades. The empty stone did not look empty anymore. The asteroid field split apart as 40 massive automated human capital structures slid out from the hollowed rocks, their long kinetic barrels already locked onto their targets. The tactical display on the Sundran flagship turned from a clear green to a solid, unreadable black as the true sensor data flooded the Imperial fleet. Grand Commander Malachar Vreth stood on his command bridge, his gold carapace cracking slightly under the sudden pressure as his systems reported that his vanguard was completely surrounded. The 14 platforms his fleet had destroyed earlier had not been combat centers or habitats at all. They were active structural telemetry anchors, and their destruction had mapped the exact warp drive positions of every Sundran ship, locking them into a pre-calculated crossfire grid. The automated human foundries fired their first salvos without a single person needing to aim or pull a trigger. Kinetic slugs accelerated to 3%, the speed of light tore straight through the heavy titanium plating of the flagship, leaving perfectly round, glowing holes through the engine rooms. The bridge shook with a low, continuous mechanical roar as the reactive armor plates melted into liquid slag under the friction of the impacts. For 18 minutes, the void of the sector burned with white ignition flares as the automated network maintained its relentless pace. 32 hulls broke, 32 hulls burned, 32 hulls died. Vreth found himself knee-deep in cooling hydraulic fluid on his ruined bridge, his primary weapons arrays completely gone from the master ledger. He reached for his ceremonial broadblade, his 4 red eyes twitching as he looked through the broken viewports at the burning remains of his vanguard fleet. Only 13 damaged ships remained of the great force that had crossed the perimeter lines to claim the sector. He managed to open a cracking, static-heavy communication channel to the human bunker, his voice shaking with rage as he threatened to bring thousands of reserve ships from the home sectors to burn the human world to ash. Hale listened to the transmission through the static on his console without moving from his iron chair. He reached out with his scarred hand, grabbed the scratched aluminum vacuum flask, and slowly twisted the metal lid back into place. The small, sharp mechanical click echoed clearly over the open interstellar broadcast channel, cutting through the warlord's threats. Hale adjusted the microphone on his headset, his voice flat and completely devoid of fear as he looked at the live telemetry feed. He told the commander that the Empire had made the oldest mistake in space by assuming a quiet perimeter was an empty one. Hale hit the master transfer key, overriding the primary holographic projectors inside the high obsidian tier back on the Imperial homeworld. The live feed did not show the face of the Marshal or the interior of the human bunker. Instead, it displayed the subcrustal scans beneath the Saturn ice rings, where thousands of heavy capital dreadnought hulls sat under active cold storage locks, their power grids beginning to hum as they woke up. The entire Sundaran High Assembly went perfectly still, their officers staring at the endless rows of active human signatures filling their screens. Hale spoke one last time into the silent channel, his words cutting through the frozen room before he cut the link. That was only the beginning. Hale placed his paper ledger into the heavy steel drawer of his desk. He slid the drawer shut until the latch caught with a heavy thud. The silver coin lay flat on the cold metal surface. The tarnished metal edge caught the dim light of the bunker.